Today, XRP rises to its highest level since September of 2021. Goldman Sachs plans to spin off its digital assets business. And John Glover of Ledn explains why he thinks Bitcoin could see a pullback before Trump takes office in January. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Jordan Smith. Crypto markets are on the rise this morning. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin climbed a little more than 1% to 91,463. Ether rose 2.5% to 31.69, and Ripple's XRP jumped to $1.13, but at one point touched $1.26, its highest level since September 6th of 2021. All right, let's talk about the top stories. MicroStrategy announced another Bitcoin acquisition. This morning, the company's executive chair, Michael Saylor, announced it acquired another 51,780 Bitcoin, or about $4.6 billion worth. Saylor says MicroStrategy now has a total holding of 331,200 Bitcoin and has achieved a year-to-date yield on its holdings of nearly 42%. As of noon Eastern, shares of the stock jumped 9%. Next, Mara Holdings plans to offer $700 million in convertible notes to buy more Bitcoin itself. Convertible notes are short-term debt typically offered to institutional investors, and that debt converts into equity in the company. Now, this new offering from Mara would be due in 2030, and the company plans to grant initial purchasers an option to buy up to $105 million in notes. The announcement says a majority of the proceeds would be used to acquire Bitcoin, with the remaining going toward repurchasing existing convertible notes due in 2026. By noon Eastern, Mara had dropped about 2%, but had recovered some of its losses earlier in the day. Last, Goldman Sachs says it's planning to spin out its digital assets platform. The investment bank says the new company would, quote, allow participants to interoperate seamlessly, efficiently, and at scale. Goldman's head of digital assets, Matthew McDermott, says a company like this has the potential to, quote, redefine market connectivity, infrastructure composability, and deliver a new suite of commercial opportunities for the buy and sell side. According to Bloomberg, the company plans to execute the spin out in the next 12 to 18 months, subject to regulatory approval. All right, let's check back in on markets for our main story. I spoke with Ledn's chief investment officer, John Glover, about Bitcoin's stability around the $90,000 mark and why he thinks the cryptocurrency could see a pullback before Trump's inauguration in January. All right, John, thank you so much for being here. I want to start with the sort of current state of markets right now. We have Bitcoin sort of bouncing around the $90,000 level. And I'm curious what you make of this support we're seeing for the cryptocurrency at that $90,000 mark and how steady it's been recently. We have seen some jumps up to 93. We've seen some bounces down to around 89, but it does seem remarkably steady right now. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, the market has definitely bid just since the Trump election, and with his appointment of his cabinet members that are surprising some, but I think really just fortifying the viewpoint that he is going to try and push through the promises that he made on his campaign trail. That's been very supportive for Bitcoin. But if you look from a technical perspective, there's a rising trend line resistance at around the 93,000, and we bounced off that a couple of times now. So I think that, it's a little bit of profit taking up the 93,000 level, and other people that are still, happy to get long positioning themselves again, ahead of January 20th.
Yeah, you just mentioned there a lot of expectations coming January from President-elect Trump. I want to talk about where things stand right now, and then we'll get into sort of the outlook for 2025. But I'm wondering right now, what are you seeing from a crypto investor in terms of risk appetite? I mean, obviously you're a lending business, and there's been what feels like a reluctance among crypto investors to take on risk until the last 3 to 4 months or so. So what are you seeing out there?
Well, I mean, we saw people jumping in to take on crypto risk when the ETFs were approved in the US back in March. So we saw the first wave of kind of early traditional finance investment adoption jumping in at that point. And then with the Trump election, we saw the next wave of people that really were sitting on the sidelines, waiting to see what was going to be the next catalyst for a move higher, jump in. That's definitely been the case. And we've seen significant inflows into the ETFs. We've seen the spot market volumes be quite high, the perpetual future volumes be quite high. But we're also starting to see the options volumes for people hedging their longs through put buying increase. And now with the CFTC looking likely to approve the options on the ETFs, we'll probably see that accelerate a little bit as well. So my core view is we're going to top out temporarily around these levels, maybe between 95 and 100,000, and see a bit of a dip down because people are going to start to look to take profits ahead of January 20th when Trump gets in the seat. just in case things don't go as they think they're going to, and he doesn't push things through really quickly. So I think we'll see a little bit of a dip down and some profit taking across the board.
That's what I was going to ask you next. I mean, traditionally, we do see some profit taking in crypto at the end of the year, but a lot of people have expected 100K Bitcoin by the end of 2024. Do you see that as realistic to expect that, or do you see some resistance coming? It sounds like you'll see some resistance ahead of January 20th, but by the end of 2024, is 100K Bitcoin sort of in your expectation?
I think it's quite possible. I'm an Elliott Wave analyst, and we are looking to complete the fifth wave of the larger wave 3. And so I do expect that we are going to top out soon. Whether it's here, whether it's 100,000, doesn't really make that much of a difference. I personally don't think we get to 100,000, but it wouldn't be shocking if we did. And then I look for a correction down to the high 60s, low 70s.
Great. What about 2025? As we've talked so much about the impact of Trump's election, his second term, is crypto regulation in the U.S. going to be the catalyst that pushes Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies higher, or is macro still in the driver's seat when you're talking about there's still a lot of uncertainty abroad? A lot of crypto investors are abroad. What is sort of the main factor come 2025?
Well, regulations are certainly going to be a big factor for sure. But ultimately, I don't think it really will stop this kind of crypto train. Adoption is still relatively small in the US. When you look at people in their investment portfolios, some advisors are now starting to say you should have kind of 1% to 3% allocation to crypto, but very few do. So as more and more investors start to jump on that bandwagon and realize that this is an asset class they should be having in their portfolio, I think we go higher regardless. But if regulation becomes cleaner and clearer in the US, then it'll happen sooner. So 2025, I think we can see this push up to 125,000. I know this will be an unpopular statement, but I think that caps out this bull run. And then we'll see a correction towards the end of 2025 that may be relatively significant, from that starting point of 125,000.
If I can ask, there's something I've been trying to wrap my head around, and that's this idea of a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve or stockpile, and what that would mean for price, given that we would see the U.S. potentially buying Bitcoin or holding Bitcoin in ways that it hasn't before. Do you see any impact on the price of Bitcoin in a significant way if we see movement toward this Bitcoin strategic stockpile? And can you see other countries potentially trying to preempt the U.S. and drive prices higher?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said whether they are stockpiling, whether they're buying to add to the stockpile. So the U.S. holds a lot of Bitcoin now from settlements and Bitcoin that they've been able to capture through legal means for those who have been bad actors. If they just hold on to those and continue having those settlements add to the stockpile, that's not going to push price higher. If they go out and actually actively buy to diversify their holdings in the Treasury, that will push prices higher. It takes a lot more than Trump saying he wants to do it for that to happen. So my guess would be that that's not going to have a big impact on prices to start with. What it may do is prevent or maybe stall other companies from selling their Bitcoin that they have right now from those same settlements that I was talking about. So, we saw Germany sell virtually all of the Bitcoin that they had. It may be that other countries just don't sell, so they don't add to that downward pressure, but I don't see countries actively going out there and starting to stockpile Bitcoin myself.
All right, that's all for Crypto World today. We're back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.